this. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be here.
Well, this is going to be fun because it was just one of those weird things where I happened to have a subscription to Board Panda, and I saw your pictures in your story, and after reading it, I was like, I have to talk to this guy. That was amazing. So do you want to just sort of talk about maybe share with the listeners what the heck I'm talking about?
Okay, so well, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I've been sober for a little over 3 years. I've been drinking for, I don't know, probably since high school, but about 10 years ago, it got real bad, and I lost a lot of weight, and the body weight that I had just wasn't there to protect me anymore, and I would get much more drunk off of fewer drinks. And I began noticing that alcohol was a problem in my life. And so I would say to my wife, I want to stop. And then I would stop for a while, but then, I would start again. And I didn't realize that I had a serious disease that causes me to get drunk every time I drink. And I tried to deny that for a decade until finally I couldn't do it anymore. I was drinking 12 to 24 drinks a day, and I was blacking out 3 or 4 times a week. And so I decided to get sober. I reached out to another alcoholic in recovery, and she picked me up, took me to my first 12-step meeting, and they gave me a coin for 24 hours sober. And I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom that day, and I looked in the mirror, and I was hungover really bad. And I just felt awful. I felt like a waste of life. I was at my lowest point, and I said to myself, I'm going to take a picture just so I can remember how bad I feel right now. And I took my phone out and I snapped a selfie. And then 30 days later, they gave me another coin for being sober for 30 days. And I looked in the mirror again, and I said to myself, wow, you know what? I look completely different. That is a total 360. And I took another picture, and I started showing it to people, and they weren't too terribly impressed because they'd heard me get sober before, like, oh yeah, Kenny's not drinking anymore. We've heard that. And so I kept them to myself. But every time I got a sobriety coin, 60 days, 90 days, 126 months, I would take a picture of myself. And after a year, I took that picture and I thought, wow, that really looks different. That looks a lot different. So I posted a side-by-side on Reddit, and it blew up. It got big, and all these people were commenting on the post and telling me how proud they were of me and asking me for advice and things like that. And so I said, well, I'm going to make a tradition out of this. So my 2-year sobriety picture, coin, I took a picture of myself, and then again for my 3-year this year. But for 2 years, I posted it on a tiny corner of Reddit. It was the alcoholism subreddit. And very modest post, maybe 300 upvotes. But someone who I don't know took my pictures off of the alcoholism subreddit and posted it on their Facebook. And by the time I found out about it, it had gotten almost 100,000 shares.
Wow.
So that was last year. And so it just kind of, blew up for a few days on Facebook. In fact, a friend of mine was the one that told me about it. She said, yeah, you showed up on my Wives of Alcoholism or Alcoholics Facebook page. They're calling you a unicorn. So apparently you're a mythical creature.
Well, typically unicorn means that it doesn't happen very often. You know what I mean?
I am one of the lucky ones, and you're right. It doesn't end up this way for a lot of people in my shoes. I'm very fortunate that I caught on. But I took the 3-year picture, and I posted it on the same place, alcoholism, and another fairly modest post, 500 or 600 upvotes. So it was pretty small. But I got a message from a journalist at Board Panda, and he said, hey, can I ask you a few questions and post your pictures? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so he asked me a few questions. I gave him a few answers. And the next thing I know, it's on every viral clickbait website, all of them.
Clickbait, yes.
No, they are clickbait. I mean, for sure. It even showed up. This was funny. It showed up on one of those really radical right wing, and it had like a hammer and sickle right wing news websites, and it had like buy your Donald Trump T-shirts with the assault rifle right here, right next to my picture. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
wow, it's actually even bringing the left and right together in my pictures. So I'm unifying everyone.
And was that use, that particular use of it, still pertaining to alcoholism, or were they using your pictures for other
No, they're
purposes?
probably just trying to get traffic on their website, and so. But maybe my pictures help some radical right wing person get sober, and I suppose that's all I really care about.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It's just, once your information is out there, there's no telling how people will use it, but that's not really our job. Our job is to be an example of, what can happen when you sort of, apply the solution to the problem.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that is amazing. And actually, I saw your story, and I was like, and the pictures were so drastic. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. But the picture was so drastic, and I thought, because you had you mentioned in the beginning of your story that you had lost some weight, and that the alcohol was not, you weren't able to, but apparently you put that weight back on because that first picture,
Yeah.
you were heavy again.
Well, I live in the mecca of craft beer. I live in the Pacific Northwest in a suburb of Portland, Oregon, and so this is where it's happening right now. And everybody's got beards and flannel shirts, and everybody drinks craft beer, and that's it's a very caloric beverage. Craft beer is much more than the light beer, for instance, and so I wanted to participate. I wanted to be cool like everybody else and drink my craft beer. It's a very high gravity form of alcohol, and so 6 of those is like 12 light beers, and I wasn't even really aware of that. It wouldn't have mattered because I would have drank until I blacked out anyways.
Okay, and you're doing 12 to 24 per day. That's a lot.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't know why. I mean, I only set out to have 1 or 2. I really did, honestly. Yeah. And I didn't understand why I couldn't stop. And I would look in the mirror. I would stand in the bathroom and look in the mirror, and just I would be in such despair. I was desperately confused. I didn't understand why I was like this, and I wanted someone to take it away. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand that I had a real physical malady, and a mental one too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kenny, typically what I do in the interviews is I'm so curious about the family of origin, because I think sometimes that explains the why. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's not your fault, right? And, I think guilt and shame is something that a lot of people struggling with alcoholism have to overcome. But it does put into perspective maybe the why a little bit. So would you mind sharing a little bit? Like, I'm always curious about the family of origin. Can you tell me maybe a little bit about like what your dad did for a living, who you grew up with, you have siblings or anything like that?
My dad was a railroader. And just like me, I became a railroader like him.
Very cool.
Both of my parents drink alcohol. They're not alcoholics, for sure. Definitely not like me. But my grandfather, my father's father, he was an abusive alcoholic, and he knew he had a problem, but didn't do anything about it. And he literally drank himself to death and died a fairly young man. I never met him because he drank himself to death. And the stories that my father shares with me about my grandfather leads me to believe that I am very much like him. In fact, my high school senior photo, I took a picture dressed in the same type of clothing and had it done in like a sepia tone to make it look like my grandfather, so you could see him side by side. So I definitely knew I looked like him in high school, and today I realize that I'm very, very much like him. I'm just lucky that I caught on now as opposed to when it was too late.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't imagine that your grandfather had access to the information that we have access to now.
I think he did. My father used to tell me that his dad used to say things like, the only difference between alcoholics and drunks is that drunks don't have to go to so many meetings.
Oh, your grandfather was going to meetings?
Well, if he did, he didn't stick around. He didn't keep coming back like they told him.
Like they say. That is
But
fascinating.
yeah, and he, yeah, so
Mm,
he must have known and tried, maybe at times. But I mean, he died in 1979, so 12 step had been around for 40 years by that point, well established, and I'm
interesting.
certain that he had opportunities to get the message, but it never stuck. And like I say, we're some of the lucky ones. That not everybody's lucky. Not everybody catches on like we do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, okay, so so your father saw probably a lot of bad things from his own father, but it didn't stop him
Mhm.
from drinking. But he never crossed the line in your estimation.
My father?
Yeah,
Oh no, I mean, I saw my dad drunk at like Christmas once or twice.
your
I mean,
dad.
honestly, I never considered my father or mother to have problems abusing alcohol.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
it was certainly always a fixture in my home growing up, and I definitely had the culture of alcohol, and consuming it, maybe on a nightly basis or at holidays. This is a way of celebration or a
Mhm.
way to blow off steam. Definitely, I was exposed to it as a young person. It was in
Yeah,
my yeah,
well, yeah, like you said, we are in a culture of alcohol.
sure.
Okay, so you mentioned that you started drinking in high school. What prompted you to start drinking in high school?
Peer pressure, just sitting around with friends, passing a bottle around, and next thing I know, I'm drunk, and oh, what a feeling. Wow, this is new. I'd like to do this more often. I mean, as a young person, a young person's mind is no match for the power of alcohol. And I definitely wanted to do it more after trying it. And I should have listened all the times they talked about peer pressure and
Mm.
using drugs and alcohol. It definitely, uh, I didn't listen when they said it.
Neither did I. Totally normal. Okay, so you start drinking in high school, and did you sort of have those? I hear in meetings a lot about people having those feelings of like not fitting in or not belonging in some way or another. Did you experience those types of feelings, and did alcohol help you with that?
Uh, Yeah, probably. I mean, when I was growing up, I was an overweight child, and I didn't have a lot of friends. I was bullied a lot, and
Hmm.
uh, once I started gaining a group of friends, alcohol just became the next logical step to be brought closer together. I always wanted to fit in, and that was definitely a way to fit in, was to consume alcohol. I don't know if alcohol was the reason to fit in, but it definitely was part of it. Sure, absolutely. And I mean, for young people, especially young people in my situation, I think uh, it's definitely a way that people uh, get into alcohol, is that way, to
Yeah,
want to
for
fit.
sure. No, being bullied is so tough as a kid. I'm sure
Hmm.
that did a number on your self-esteem for sure.
Absolutely. Of course, the boost to my ego through all this attention for my pictures is definitely making up for that. I'm a narcissist, of course. I'm
Yeah.
selfish and self-centered, and so who wouldn't want all the upvotes and the likes and the comments?
Yeah, sure. No, that's very typical, right? It's like, I don't know, but it's almost like when stuff happens in our childhood, like we're deprived or we suddenly feel self-conscious for whatever reason. And we develop this low self-esteem that's based in this self-centeredness.
Hmm.
And then it's almost as if we try to overcompensate for that from that moment forward. It's like there's this need that we develop. It's like it like doesn't even exist until we are like in our teenage years. And then but that's just a very tough experience to go through as a kid. You just really want to belong and be a
Yeah.
part of something. So to be excluded,
Always wanted to belong. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that separation is really painful. So sounds like drinking helped with that. But did you start suffering consequences right away, or it wasn't until later?
No, I could take it or leave it until I was about 30, no, a little like in my late 20s. I started because I used to be 350 pounds. I
Wow.
wore size 50 pants. I was a big guy, and once the weight came off, I had gastric bypass surgery 10 years ago. So once the weight came off, you know, alcohol that I consumed bypassed 2 stages of digestion, and dumping undigested alcohol into your, here's a medical term, into your jejunum, which is the second digestive stage. That's dangerous. I mean, and they tell you not to drink afterwards. And, I didn't listen, certainly. I couldn't. But dumping it right into your system, every single drink is like drinking on an empty stomach. And if you couple that with the extreme weight loss, body weight does protect you from the dangers of alcohol, unfortunately. But once that body weight was gone, it just accelerated and exacerbated this disease that eventually would have reared its head. But I gained a lot of weight back while I was drinking. So
That's interesting. I've heard that a lot, that a lot of people that have gastric bypass, like switch addictions, basically, like the food is like your primary addiction, you get the bypass, and then you switch addictions. It
yeah.
sounds like that was your experience.
Yeah. And, I'm not a big fan of the term addictive personality because I think it's kind of an easy crutch to use, but there is a lot of truth behind it. Addicts do like to change one addiction for another. And addicts really shouldn't be exposed to upvotes and likes, and social media has just ruined us all, honestly. So, and here I am participating in it, in real time. But yeah, and when you take one addiction away, we just tend to move on to another. I'm very lucky that I have 12-step to fall back on to, keep me grounded, because I do like to, I do like to jump into these other addictions, and social media is one of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so listen, it's one of those things that you hear. It's like the alcohol is just a symptom of a deeper problem, right? But the solution is simple, it's spiritual, and it has nothing to do with the problem. That's why there's a 12-step group for every problem that you can think of.
Yeah.
That tells me that it doesn't matter what the problem is, it's about the solution. And typically the solution is, when you're talking about being bullied as a child and feeling that painful separation, once you feel that separation, we look to something else to fill it. It's like the whole self-avoidance thing that, Buddhism is really big about, examining, why do we self-avoid,
Sure.
and typically it's like, it's been my experience that, we don't have good coping skills. We have these big feelings and we don't have good coping skills. And I found that going through the 12 steps has helped me do emotion management type of stuff. Was that your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to stop drinking. I wanted my life back when I went to my first 12-step meeting. And I had no idea that the sobriety was just going to be a byproduct. That's just like a bonus. What I really got was an opportunity to love myself, to look in the mirror and like seeing what I saw, and to be free from self, to be free from that person, that selfish and self-centered person that I was going into my first meeting. And yeah, sure, I still do selfish and self-centered things, but I do catch myself more often these days. But the spiritual awakening that they talk about in the 12th step, honestly, it completely turned my entire life around. People talk in meetings about their disease. My disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups. That's why I'm here in this meeting. And in my opinion, my disease, he's that kid that was bullied, and he is that man staring in the mirror who who wants to be sober, doesn't want to be drunk all the time, and wants to love himself, but can't. And I take care of him. You know, he lives in me, and I have to take care of him every single day. And when I look at it like that, it gives me power. It's an empowering feeling that he's part of me, and I don't ever leave him behind. And either he can come out and live on the outside, or I can take care of him on the inside. And then people see, what's happened now. People see the byproduct of all of this work, all of this action that I've taken. Because 12-step is a program of action, and it's taught me to take action in my life. And the thing that people see in these pictures, that's real. I mean, I didn't just comb my hair and snap a selfie. And there's been a lot of people that have accused me of that over the last several years. What people see is what actually happened. And the reason it is because I was taught to take action. I did what they told me to in the meetings,
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your higher power. Did you grow up with any kind of religion or?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We had crucifixes on the walls and stuff. And my parents both grew up religious, and they taught me, general things about Christianity growing up. And, we went to church every now and again, but I was agnostic when I first walked into 12-step. And I basically still am. I pray and meditate, and I say God, and I refer to God just like it says in the book. But my higher power is not me. And that was the real thing that I had to wrap my head around from the beginning, was that my higher power is not me. I am not him. And no matter what, I can't believe that I can do this on my own, because at the moment I do, I lose it all. So whatever people's higher power is, that really is the fundamental thing that they have to think first, is that, well, it's not me. I am not the higher power. I had a friend in the program who recently died, and he had 25 heart attacks. And I said, geez, man, I mean, at this point, aren't you the higher power? I mean, can you and he had been sober for 37 years. I mean, he was a real inspiration in the program. But it's funny that this tough person keeps coming back and like, no, I no matter how tough I am, I'm still a slave to this disease, and I have to keep coming back to these meetings. He was a great guy, and he was always there every single day.
Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's tough to lose those people who become like a cornerstone in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those people are really.
So, but you mentioned that you're agnostic. Are you framing that in the way by meaning like you believe in something, but you're not 100% sure what it is? Like, why would you claim to be agnostic if you believe?
The word agnostic means without knowledge. I got that from Joe and Charlie. You probably heard Joe and Charlie, big guys in the program. But without knowledge. Gnostic is Latin for knowledge. So you're agnostic. That means I don't have enough knowledge to hold a firm belief in a specific God or deity, as opposed to atheist, which is without God, without religion. You are a theist. And it's not that I believe that there is no God. I just don't subscribe to someone else's religion. I certainly appreciate the beliefs that other people hold. But I think the most important thing for me is that I came to believe. And I talk about this a lot in meetings. The reason this program works for me is because I believe it will work. I had to come to believe in a power greater than myself that would restore me to sanity. And I realize now that that's why people say, do you believe in miracles? And I didn't believe in miracles, but a miracle happened in my life. A miracle transformed me from the person that you see in that first picture to the person that you see in all of the subsequent pictures. That is a miracle actually happening, like a flip book. You can put the pictures together and flip them and just see me improving. Mm-hmm. That's a miracle in and of itself. Yes, I believe in miracles. I have to believe in miracles because one actually happened in my own life.
Yeah, so it's like an experience.
So yeah, sure. I mean, I say I'm an agnostic, but here I am believing in miracles. And it's a journey too. It's a transformative process, is coming to believe and understanding what you believe. And it can change and it evolves very much.
Yeah,
And it has for
absolutely.
me. So,
Yeah, I mean, in all the 12-step literature, a lot of times they talk about how we show up to the rooms with a prejudice. And I've always been taught that if you have a problem with the word God, typically you have a problem with someone else's God. So it's nice
yeah,
to have a process where you can sort of, do some, break it down and examine your beliefs and redefine or reframe them in a way that makes sense for you. And
yeah.
then,
Hey, and if you want to meet any of those people, they're all hanging out on the Stop Drinking subreddit. I don't hang out there anymore. You have to believe in God to go to 12 step. Stay away, man. They make you believe in God. It's funny.
It
When
is
I showed
funny.
up, I was ready to believe whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
if they told me that I had to go out and wash all their cars to get sober, I would have done it. I
Yeah.
was ready to believe whatever they told me, just so long as I didn't have to be drunk another day in my
Yeah, that sounds like a gift of desperation, being
life. Yeah,
willing
it's
to
what.
be open-minded. Yeah, that I just it annoys me to no end. People who don't understand the program or have never really participated, they don't really get it, and
Yeah,
they have opinions about something that they've never. It's
well,
content
that's okay,
prior
because
to investigation.
if they keep drinking, they're gonna get to that point where they're ready to believe, and that's where I was. I mean,
Yeah,
so we all reach that point at different levels, and some of us die trying to get there. And it's unfortunate.
yes, yeah. So we don't all get there, but
Yeah.
okay. So you had a friend, sort of. I heard the term Eskimo you in out from the cold into the rooms.
Yeah.
And what made you finally? Did you have a rock bottom, as they say, or a moment of clarity?
Sure. And I had quite a few rock bottoms where I knew for sure after that it was time, but I didn't know what to do. And the last rock bottom was when I reached out. So I was on vacation. It was the beginning of November, and I bought myself a case of beer, 24 beers. It's my favorite brand of beer, and I was going to ration them out, 3 or 4 beers a night for the duration of my week vacation. Nice little nightcap, and I had big plans. So the first night of my vacation, I put my son to bed at 8 o'clock, and I was going to have my 3 beers. And by 11 o'clock, I had had 19 beers.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had only set out to drink 3, but in 3 hours I drank 19. And something inside me said, Kenny, your life is no longer manageable. And I didn't use those words, but that's definitely the way I felt. And I knew. And so I sent text messages to people I knew in recovery. And one of them got back to me, my friend's wife. And she said, don't worry. Look, I'll help you any way I can. And she picked me up the next morning. She took me to my first meeting. And what a lifesaver. And I needed to be picked up. I needed somebody to come and get me and drag my carcass into a meeting because I couldn't do it on my own. I knew I couldn't. I needed somebody to help me. And I reached out, and that hand was there when I reached out.
That's
So
amazing.
I'm a firm believer that, in order to get help, you need to reach out to somebody else in recovery. I think that method works better than any other method.
Yeah,
So.
I couldn't agree more. So can you describe what it was like for you in the beginning, in terms of, you're hearing this idea that you need to get a sponsor, probably 90 and 90, and
Mhm.
work the steps. How did you go about choosing a sponsor?
Well, I asked a friend of mine who I work with if he would sponsor me. And he said, and that was just in the first couple of days. And he goes, man, I think I'm just too close to you. I think I know too much of all the bad stuff. And, I'll sponsor you if you insist, but I think I have a better person to be your sponsor. And he set me up with my sponsor. And that man has saved my life many times over. I called him up, it took me a couple of days, but that was nerve-wracking. That was the hardest thing maybe I had to do in recovery, was pick up the phone and call somebody who I'd never met and
Wow.
ask them to be my sponsor. And he answered the phone. He says, yes, I will be your sponsor. Call me every day, meeting every day. He gave me these two, like 100-pound weights. You're like, curl these, call me every day, meeting every day. Whoa, that's work. I have to do work. I thought I could just do this whenever I wanted to.
Yeah. I'm
And he
about
helped me.
to die, but what? You want me to pick up the phone and call someone?
That's crazy. That's impossible. I can't do that. Call people on the phone? Forget it.
Yeah.
And I did. I had to call him every single day. And I tried texting him. Oh, I'm going to text you today. He goes, no. I didn't say text. I said, call me every day. And he didn't explain all that in the beginning. He waited for me to text him to go, I didn't say text me. I said, call me. I didn't sponsor anybody through text.
Right.
And, he was kind of a jerk about it in the beginning, but something, that's the way some people learn. That's certainly the way I learned.
Yeah.
And then that guy ran my program, and I'm very thankful. And the 90 and 90, absolutely. Yeah. I had to get a notebook and write down my meetings and count them, and go to 2 a day if I missed one. And it was hard. It was very hard. It was not easy.
So you're working full time. You were married, and you had a little boy already when you were doing it. Because I hear that a lot. You tell these newcomers that they have to go to a meeting every day, and they're like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, you had time to drink.
I had time to drink. I mean, I work on call for the railroad, so I'm busy all the time. And I'd get off work at like 8:00 in the morning, just be exhausted, been up for like 36 hours. Oh, I got to go to bed. Oh, wait, no, it's time to drink. I can drink for 6 hours. I can commit 6 hours to that. So like, I didn't have any excuses right off the bat. If I had 6 hours to drink after being up for a day and a half, then I have an hour to take myself to a meeting and get the message. So,
and how often did you meet with your sponsor to do step work? Did you go I
met him once a week, sometimes twice a week in the beginning. But I definitely called him to check in every single day. And he insisted on that. And my sponsor's a busy guy too. My sponsor is a world traveler. I would call him, and he wouldn't tell me about it either. I'd call him, and he'd say, oh, sorry, I have a bad connection. I'm in Hong Kong. And I'm like, who is this guy? And or oh, sorry about the connection. I'm in Portugal. And I'd say, what are you doing in Portugal? He goes, oh, my friend's taking pictures of the Northern Lights in Iceland. I said, yeah, but why are you in Portugal? He goes, oh, well, I thought I'd just swing by and check it out. I've never been to Portugal. Talk about setting an example. Like, here's this guy who's traveling the world, living his best life. I want to be just like this person.
Wow, that's amazing that you got hooked up with somebody that was like such a good fit for you.
Oh, absolutely. Just first try, nailed it. And I can't thank my friend enough who said, I don't think I would make a good sponsor, but here's a person who I think would make a good sponsor. And I thanked him many times. He's been a real spiritual guide for me, both of those guys.
Yeah, no, it's good to have a lot of support. And did he also suggest that you develop a support network in case he wasn't around? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He taught me how to use my phone list, and I had a few of them over several years, because that wasn't my very first 12-step meeting. I had gone into meetings before and checked it out and be like, nah, well, this probably isn't for me, or I think I can do my own thing. So I had phone lists laying around, and he said, do you have a phone list? I said, yeah. He says, do you know how to use it? And I said, yes. But he said, well, look, why don't we just try it? And you start calling people on that list and see who picks up. And that was another big mountain to climb, is calling strangers. Strangers put their names on that phone list for a reason. Mm-hmm. When they pass around a list, they want you to call them because it keeps them sober. They're not just trying to keep you sober. They're trying to keep themselves sober, and they want to talk to you. And, anybody who calls people on a phone list, that person is likely going to succeed in the program. Because if you have enough courage to call those strangers who put their number on that list, then you know what, you're ready to take some more steps.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, especially from women I sponsor. Like, they don't want to bother anybody, but I have to always remind them. It's like, how do you feel when you get a phone call from someone who is looking for some support? Doesn't that make you feel useful? Doesn't that make you like, aren't you happy to get those calls? And it builds your self-esteem. It's like, that's what you're giving somebody when you call them, is an opportunity to build their self-esteem.
Yeah. Well, my sponsor's been sober for 20 years, and two things happened to me that have never happened to him that were really surprising. One of them happened last year. This guy off a phone list, he called me off of a phone list, and I called my sponsor. I said, "Hey, you never guess what happened today? This guy called me off a phone list." And he goes, "Really? That's never happened to me in 20 years." And that's funny because, we fill out these phone lists so often for people who need it, and, nobody ever calls. And then another thing that happened last year was there were 3 newcomers, and I gave all 3 of them my number, and all 3 of them asked me to be their sponsor.
Wow.
They all called me back and asked me to be their sponsor. And I called my sponsor. I was like, what am I going to do? 3 guys. I gave 3 guys my number. All 3 called me.
That is awesome. Yeah. I've been around for quite a while too, and I trade numbers. So
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't,
good idea.
yeah, because they're too scared to call typically. And I have found that if I call once or twice, then they start calling back. So
That's good.
I trade numbers, because that is so hard. That is so hard. Like you were saying, not everybody is that desperate in the beginning. You know what I mean? Some people are just terrified. So I have found that if I trade numbers with someone and be like, I'm going to call you, and I know you got my number, so you better call me back.
Little
Even if it's
accountability.
even if it's just a check-in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're the whole reason, is one another, that we stay sober, is this fellowship, is the people. And so having that support network, my sponsor's a busy guy, and he doesn't always answer the phone. Now I have to call him every day, or I did. In that first year, I had to call him every single day, but that didn't mean he was going to talk to me every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, you better believe it. He made sure that I had other people I could call when my tail was falling off, and it did sometimes. And I would have to reach out. I'd usually reach out to people by going to a meeting. But yeah, sure. I definitely had to call. And I have a phone full of numbers of people in the program who I can call when I'm baffled by, whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes the emotions just are overwhelming, and it's nice to already be in the habit of calling somebody.
Yeah.
The other benefit of keeping current with several people is that when the shit hits the fan, you're already current with several people, so you don't have to go into the backstory. You can just kind of jump right into solution.
Right.
So that's another benefit of being current with like multiple people.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. I wonder, do you have any books that you could recommend? Obviously, besides the main 12-step literature, do you have any other books that were helpful to you in the beginning, or other resources, things that you leveraged to help you?
Well, one of the books, actually, what's kind of funny is that one of the things that helped me lose weight so much was when I was just about a year in the program, and my sponsor told me no big changes in the first year, no big relationship changes or whatever. And because I told him I wanted to start losing weight. He said, no. Don't do any of that in the first year. Gain weight if you need to. And I did. I put on like 30 pounds because I was eating a bunch of peanut M&Ms when I get cravings. And so I ballooned up. But one of the books that I read that was so instrumental for me was Positively Unstoppable by Diamond Dallas Page. And what's funny, so he has a company called DDP Yoga, and I started doing DDP Yoga, and that was actually how I lost a fair amount of the weight and transformed my body. In fact, I was wearing his T-shirt in my 3-year picture.
Oh,
and
nice.
So they tweeted me out. I thought that was so neat that I made it to his Twitter and his Instagram. But what's neat is that they followed principles that I already was familiar with in 12-step, like writing things down. Do you want to achieve some goal? Write it down. What are these steps that you're going to take to get it? And doing yoga one day at a time, instead of, you got this whole thing planned out and you got to nail this every single day and do all this stuff. It's like, well, let's take it back a step. What are we going to do today to get toward that goal? And those were principles that I already was practicing in 12-step, and they were easy for me to understand. And he's such an inspirational guy. I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake.
Mm-mm.
But Jake the Snake Roberts, professional wrestler, he wrestled with Diamond Dallas Page, and Jake was a alcoholic, drug addict, really bad. And Diamond Dallas Page took him into his home and helped him get back on his feet, helped him get sober. And Jake the Snake is still clean and sober today, several years later.
Wow.
But he took him under his wing and helped him on back onto his feet. And DDP is a real honorable guy like that. He really cares about people, and he interacts with the people who do his program. And he wants to know about their successes. He wants to know about their hardships, and he's very interested in it. And so his book, Positively Unstoppable, it was a big inspiration for me because he was already using methods that I was familiar with. It was easy to understand, easy to follow, and very inspirational.
Very cool. I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, listen, I certainly appreciate you being willing to take the time during your vacation to talk about this and share your story. I love the pictures. I know it has helped inspire lots of people to maybe find the courage to take some action, like you were saying, and transform their lives. So
yeah, there's one more thing I might mention. I released a video several weeks ago for the first time. Not too many people know about it. It hasn't really made its rounds, but it's on YouTube. And if you write my name in, Kenny Dunn Transformation, if you Google that, it'll link to the video on YouTube. But the night that I quit drinking, I was in a blackout. I have no memory of making this video, but I sat right here in this same spot at my kitchen table, and I made a video of myself in a drunken stupor, basically begging God to take away my alcoholism and saying that I wanted to stop. It was a very powerful video, and I finally decided to release it, and it's on YouTube now, and people can see that desperate man, that man that I used to be, that person that lives inside that I have to take care of. And so I found that on my phone a few days after I first got sober, and I had no idea it existed. I had no memory of making it. Wow. So people can see that if they like, and it's difficult to watch. I have a difficult time watching it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, and people listening to this podcast or seeing the video, you're going to be surprised at the difference today.
Yeah, I can definitely leave a link to that so that they can have the before and after, so to speak.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, well, I'm honored that you thought of me to be on your podcast, and anytime, absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and you have a great day.
All right, you too.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.